Hi guys, it's SkintBoot here, and today what I'm going to be bringing you guys is a No Man's Sky video. And in today's video, what I'm going to be delving into is some more heavy speculation surrounding a feature that has been talked about since the dawn of No Man's Sky, and seems to be picking up some more traction recently. And that is, of course, the proposed features of cities or advanced civilizations in No Man's Sky. For this video, I want to explain how cities could indeed work in No Man's Sky, why they would benefit the experience, but also the major drawbacks of introducing them as a full-fledged feature. As always, feel free to let me know your thoughts on the matter, and without further ado, please do sit back and relax. Let's get started. Okay, so let us start by outlining just what people mean when they talk about cities in No Man's Sky. Now, it is hard to speak for everyone when talking about a feature like this, but what I personally think of when this addition is mentioned are the huge procedural cities of Star Citizen. These cities are shown to be generated by algorithms and maths, just like the tech behind creating planets in No Man's Sky, and they are probably the closest definition to perfect I can think of if you were to watch footage of Star Citizen. Now, I'm not incredibly big on that game, nor do I understand it, to be honest. It's a game which has always kind of got me interested, but then I've read so much bad stuff about it. Generally speaking, I'm very out the loop on it, but I think that a lot of inspiration for No Man's Sky's own procedural cities comes from Star Citizen's introduction. But right away, we're presented with our first issue before we can even begin to speculate on how cities would function, and that is how Star Citizen and No Man's Sky are extremely different games. Star Citizen is marketed as a huge online space exploration simulator with combat, economies, player interaction, and so on. It's essentially an MMO, but to a scale which no game has ever attempted before. It's very much about feeling like you're in a developed version of space, where a lot of what you find will be somewhat colonized or discovered already. There does seem to be a constant feeling that you are not alone in that game. Again, you will get your isolated moments and your moments of feeling very, very small, but compared to No Man's Sky, it's extremely minimal from what I can tell. However, as stated, No Man's Sky is the complete opposite. The game's original intention was to feel so crushingly lonely, like you're lost in an infinite galaxy that isn't very friendly towards you. This feeling did later change with Next, or I guess 1.3 actually, but still to this day, the game can feel extremely isolated and does an absolutely great job of putting into perspective just how tiny and insignificant you are, especially with the introduction of third person. And this, in my opinion, is the biggest reason why cities would feel out of place in a game like No Man's Sky. They make sense in something like Star Citizen because of the tone that exists throughout the game, but visiting insanely populated planets in No Man's Sky would just feel, I don't know, out of place, a little forced maybe. It's obviously subjective depending on who you ask, but my gut instinct tells me that it would change the atmosphere of the game a little too much. And of course, I and myself don't want that, and I think a lot of other people in the community don't want that either. However, that is not to say that this feature wouldn't work in No Man's Sky whatsoever, that it's a feature that simply cannot function in a game like No Man's Sky. Because if it is done correctly, then I believe No Man's Sky would actually benefit a lot more from a feature like advanced civilizations or settlements. And what would be the best way to do this correctly? Make it rare as fuck. I think a huge missing part of No Man's Sky that has always bothered me since I really started to play it is the unpredictable nature that was lost after the game launched, and I guess with later updates as well. In the game's current state, landing on a cold planet means you expect snow on the ground, the same leafless trees, and perhaps a mountain or maybe two. The same goes with scorched planets. You expect the same model of plant each time. There is never really a feeling to me that anything can happen, that I can see anything, I can see any procedural thing right in front of my eyes, the game, in my opinion, needs to just let loose a little bit more and say fuck it to the rules and the laws that they have in place and try and make things a little more crazy. I guess the best example is terrain. You go back in time and you look at 1.0 footage or release day No Man's Sky footage, and the terrain was jagged. It was really jarring to look at, but it was varied as shit, like so varied. You compare that to the terrain now, and yes, it's more refined, it's less jagged, it's more natural, but it's near enough the same. It's just rolling hills, mountains, there's no deep caverns, there's no fucking massive ridges, everything is way too predictable. So if Hello Games were to add cities into No Man's Sky, then they must be something that we barely ever see, like coming across an anomalous planet or one without colour. You know, you can find them, it is possible, but they're nowhere near as common as regular planets. Because if every single alien landscape you come across holds a big fuck off settlement, then not only does that ruin the isolation feeling, but it will also lose its novelty really quickly. In my opinion, the best way to add cities into No Man's Sky would be by having a whole new planet type designed specifically for cities. Something like civilized planets that almost have laws, economies, and of course, big crazy settlements. These planets would be extremely difficult to come across and maybe even require you to be at a certain point in the story or have a certain upgrade for your ship. Perhaps as a quest, you will need to construct a whole new hyperdrive to travel to advanced systems that without this upgrade, you wouldn't ever be able to visit. I could go on for hours about how this would best fit into No Man's Sky, but in simple terms, all I'm asking is that if Hello Games do ever decide to go down this route, then please, for the love of God, don't make these common as those fucking whip plants. But in terms of the actual cities themselves, how would they benefit the player or fit into the gameplay loop? This is one of the hardest things that people can describe when you're talking about cities, because really the possibilities are fairly endless. Well, going off the idea that they're constructed in their own civilized system, perhaps these planets will act as a sort of Saint Denis of No Man's Sky, a place where technology and civilization has evolved from the Wild West as such, and in terms of No Man's Sky, this could mean, again, endless things in terms of gameplay. My biggest request would be technology. Advanced systems would house technology that no other planet has due to their advances in sciences and mathematical progress. Let's just say that you can pick up some absolutely beefy multi-tool with stats that aren't seen anywhere else, but because these are more built up areas, they cost a whole load more to buy them than if you were to say find it in a regular system at a little outpost. However, the catch is that they are nowhere near as rare as elsewhere in the galaxy due to how civilized these systems are. So you have the choice between paying loads more units for a multi-tool with absolutely sick stats or risking getting a cheaper one elsewhere, but they're hard as fuck to find, if not impossible. The same could apply for cosmetics, ships, and maybe even base parts. You could even have some sort of shop that sells pre-made bases, you know, Red Dead 2 style, and these can be bought and assembled using the little blueprint analyzer thing on your shoulder. Advanced systems should provide a whole host of modern technology at an insanely high price, but technology that has stats or qualities that are rare as fuck if you were to look anywhere else for them. That is just one of the very small ideas that is probably a little too complicated for Hello Games to introduce, but my general want is for the universe in No Man's Sky to have tiny parts that aren't untouched. Keep the game as it is currently, obviously, but include this massive Blackwater-esque city as almost an Easter egg. Discoveries so goddamn rare or precise that not everyone will experience them if they were to play the game. And if Hello Games can take one thing from this video, it's that cities cannot be common. Cities need to be a wow moment, but also something that will not detract from the overall isolation feeling of No Man's Sky. By all means include them, but ensure the fundamental feeling of the game still remains untouched, because at the end of the day, cities are not something which everybody wants. I think when it does come to this city debate, I was initially really against the idea of them, mainly because I did think that it detracted from that overall feeling of No Man's Sky, that original vision that Sean wanted the game to be. However, in recent times, with the introduction of multiplayer in Next and some other features as well that has made the universe feel less lonely, it's very clear that Sean and Hello Games in general have a completely different vision for No Man's Sky. They have a different pathway, and they're very much building a game which they kind of like, but is mainly focused on the community. I guess it's kind of split down the middle. I believe that their original vision of a lonely and isolated No Man's Sky is not really what people want. There are people that like that, but for the most part, those vocal about what was wrong with the game was always picking up on the lack of multiplayer. So with the game focusing in this brand new direction, I do think that cities would make a reasonable amount of sense to be added to the game, but as stated, they need to be rare. They need to be something which is actually fun and interesting to explore and doesn't become a feature where you see a city and you go, fuck it, I know what that's going to be like, because that would be honestly the worst thing that Hello Games could do. But guys, that is just about all I have to say for this video, but as always, I do want to know your thoughts on this, because this is a very big debate, so please do feel free to put your thoughts in the comment section of the video. I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do feel free to leave a like on it, and if you guys could also subscribe to MZK, then that'd be absolutely fantastic. And as always, I will see you guys on my next video. This is SkintBoot, signing out.